Oh god, I'm trapped in the Infinite Ikea. How long have I been in here? Can I get out? How can I get out? How can I survive the vicious staff of the Infinite Ikea and work with the other survivors in this terrifying, endless building? Okay, let's start from the beginning. Day 1. I'd come to this flat-pack nightmare with my lovely wife, Brenda, to pick up some stupid sofa she saw online. We could have ordered it in, but me, being a cheapskate and a fool, instead decided it'd be a dandy idea to head in and pick it up ourselves, even though I can't stand shopping in these giant stores. Of course, it didn't take long for us to get separated. I was wandering around, just pretending I knew what I was doing, surrounded by unfamiliar people. Then, not surrounded by any people at all. Like the complete doofus I was, I'd somehow gotten lost. Just needed to find my bearings again, and then I could call Brenda to come save me. But I never did find my bearings. The hours went on, and I was still lost. Day 2. My dominant emotion on this day was nothing more than sheer humiliation, knowing I'd been bested by a damn Swedish furniture store. I spent the night before sleeping on a futon, wondering how I'd gotten myself into this flat-pack calamity. I spent the day searching for food, my confusion and exhaustion increasing by the moment. For a while, I even entertained the idea that I might have died and gone to some Nordic hell. That night, I went to bed hungry, knowing if I didn't eat soon, I might be found as a skeleton on a dusty old futon. God, it can't end like this. I can't die on day 2. Day 3. I continued my journey through the labyrinthian bowels of the IKEA, disoriented by the endlessly iterating collections of cheap furniture. You know, there was something terrifying about the emptiness of it all. This affordable but impossible to assemble void. Starvation has always been one of the most horrific deaths, hasn't it? You could only imagine my relief when I saw the figure standing a few feet in front of me, dressed like a member of IKEA staff. I'd found salvation. I'd found someone who could help me out of here. But when I approached, I realized something was horribly wrong. This wasn't a human being standing before me. It was a monster. The being I'd later come to know is called the Staff by the many people who fear them. It chased me, repeating, "The store is closed, you need to vacate the premises," flailing for me with its long, frightening limbs. I only survived day 3 because I locked myself in a closet and just waited while it hammered against the wood with its fists. Once the night was over, it left and I was able to escape. Day 4. I was feeling some intense hunger pangs on this day. Not to mention the fact that I now knew there were monsters out there just waiting to beat me to death if they caught me when the lights turned down. Needless to say, I wasn't in the best headspace and I didn't have enough charge on my phone to justify opening up my meditation app. Then I found Nirvana. I found the cafeteria stocked full of delicious, warm Swedish meatballs. You know, no food has ever tasted so sweet to me. And this delicious meal also gave way to one of the most exciting new developments, Gloria. Gloria was a veteran. She taught me everything I needed to know about this place. Even on the first day I met her, she felt like someone I'd known for years. It was her that took me back to her home in this place. A little fortress made of IKEA furniture filled with a whole community of other people trapped in there. It was like being allowed into the Garden of Eden. Day 5, and it feels good to be alive. I met up with all the different people around the camp. They tell me the most bizarre and fascinating stories. This sounds crazy, I know, but I get the sense not all of them came from the same place as me. Different IKEA'S in different countries, or maybe, even as nutty as it sounds, from different worlds. One guy, Tony, who's been trapped in here for a year and some change, we got to talking about different vacations we'd taken on the outside. He told me he was from New York, and I told him I visited there once, and I'd love going to see the Statue of Liberty up close. That's when he told me that he'd never heard of the Statue of Liberty. You know, I didn't know what to make of that. Strange little details aside, I couldn't be happier to be there with other people. The next step would be finding a way out of here, and back to Brenda. Day 6. Gloria and several others led me out on our first excursion. Missions where the goal was to collect more food and supplies and map out the surrounding area. I nearly jumped out of my skin when I saw a staff member standing in our path at one point, and the others all just laughed at me. The staff member just stood there, placid and still. Gloria told me that it's okay. The staff are harmless during the day. It's only nighttime when they enter their pattern of aggression. So long as you don't get lost during the daytime, you're generally fine. The team often used string, like Thesis, to trail behind them and ensure they don't get lost. It was clear they'd been here long enough to work out systems for every possibility. Felt like I was in good hands with them. We collected meatballs and some rugs to fortify the walls and headed back. Day 7. This was the first night that we had to fend off a full-on attack. Those monsters, the staff, came at us in huge groups, pounding at the outside of our perimeter with their balled fists. It was terrifying. As we were fighting them off, we tied IKEA kitchen knives to the end of curtain rails and speared them, one by one, until all of them were dead. They just kept coming. More and more and more of them. When it looked like one of the walls to the north of the community was going to fall, everyone around me started to panic. That's when Barry, one of the biggest men in the camp, grabbed a hammer in each hand and went outside. He fought like a beast, taking on staff member after staff member, tanking hit after hit. It was something to see. That's when he took off into the depths of the store, drawing the staff away behind him, saving us all. We never saw Barry again after that, but he's the reason all of us made it past Day 7. Thank you, Barry, wherever you are. Day 8. Gloria took me out alone today, on another search for the escape. That's when she told me about her sister. She'd gone shopping in IKEA with her well over a year ago now, when she was separated and got lost in here, just like me. I had a lot in common with her, including my feelings of guilt for abandoning my loved ones and my drive to escape and be united with them. While we were out that day, we didn't find anything useful. Gloria seemed sad, but unsurprised. The Infinite Ikea had its way of slowly grinding you down. Days 9 to day 17. Despite a rocky start, I was finding my legs in the Infinite Ikea. I started to get to know my fellow IKEA prisoners. I started to understand and truly befriend them. We went on expeditions pretty much daily, either to collect new food, more supplies to help build up our community, or to keep searching for an exit. To me, it started to feel like we were making progress, and that helped a great deal to keep my emotions semi-stable. But it wasn't the same for Gloria. After all, she'd been here for so much longer than me, and she had her sister to consider on the outside. To her, these routines I was becoming part of now felt like a prison within a prison. She was trapped. Had her sister forgotten her out there? Had she been declared dead? Were people even still looking for her? And it was on day 18 that it all got a little too much for poor Gloria. She snuck out of the camp at night, when the staff were most active trying to find the exit. Sadly, that had cost Gloria her life. There's no way of knowing what happened to her exactly, but considering how bruised up her body was when we found her, it was easy to make an educated guess. She'd gotten bum rushed by the staff and beaten to death before she could have even mustered up a defense. It was a horrible way to go. We tried giving her a dignified funeral as we could, given the circumstances, closing her up in a body-sized box. That was the day I decided to stop just trying to survive and start trying to escape. I owe that to Brenda. If she really had gotten out, I couldn't keep her waiting. But I wouldn't be alone. As it turns out, another 2 members of the little IKEA community I'd come to know were willing to risk it all with me. A man named Kelvin and a young woman named Vicky. They were sick of just waiting around and fending off attacks from the staff night after night. They both told me they'd rather die during an escape attempt than while cowering under a pile of cheap rugs. And so, each armed with claw hammers from the 6-piece IKEA Fix-A toolkit and as many Pruta Tupperware containers full of meatballs that we could carry, we set off into the great unknown of IKEA. We traveled for weeks, marking our tracks on the ground with the Mala mixed colors chalk selection so we never got caught going in circles. One day bled into the next. Nights were spent trying to hide in closets and bathtubs while the staff hunted relentlessly for people just like us. Every single time, we got lucky. That is, until day 41. Here's something you need to know about the Infinite Ikea. You're probably already aware, if you're watching this, that the 24-hour cycle of night and day is dictated by the store lights up above. But the space between day and night isn't a gradient here, it's a cliff. You can be minding your own business when suddenly, pitch darkness, and now the staff are on your ass. That's exactly what happened on day 41. We're in the middle of a kitchenware selection, surrounded by a few docile members of staff when suddenly the lights switched off, and they went hostile on us. They look pretty goofy after the initial shock has worn off, but believe me when I say that these monsters can really pack a mean wallop when they want to. And we received a reminder of this unfortunate fact that night. The staff swarmed us, repeating that awful phrase, "The store is closed, you need to vacate the premises," while they struck and flailed at us. If it wasn't for our trusty claw hammers, we would have been dead that night. Thankfully, we were able to give better than we were getting. We managed to kill a decent number of staff members, and then make a run for a section with better hiding places. Myself, Vicky, and Kelvin all stowed away in a large wardrobe. until we saw light flickering through the crack in the door, like we were rejected extras for some painful community theater take on the Chronicles of Narnia. But while we survived that night, we didn't survive unscathed. My face was swollen from a nasty punch one of the staff members dealt me, and from the pain in my chest, I might have been dealing with a few broken ribs. Kelvin sprained his ankle during the escape, and Vicky had a cut on her forehead from when one of the staff members kneed her in the face during the fray. You never win these fights, you just survive them. We made a temporary camp in the area where we could rest and recover, as well as shaking off the justifiable fear of death or grievous harm that dampened our resolve to get out of this place. That took us to day 53. Of course, food was always a concern. I don't want to romanticize what happened in there, as much as I'm sure someone on the outside might want to imagine this whole experience as some kind of exciting survival horror game, but I assure you, it was less survival horror and more survival and horror. Meaning not only are we suffering from constant fear, stress, and paranoia for our safety in here, but we also need to keep ourselves fed and watered. You're just as likely to die from starvation in here as you are to be beaten to death. We went in search of another IKEA kitchen where we could fill up on more water and meatballs, your lifeblood in a place like this. It took us several more days of searching and hiding, before we hit pay dirt. By the time we actually got our hands on the food and water, we were starving and practically coughing up dust. Those meatballs were the most delicious food I've ever tasted, and I could tell from their faces that Kelvin and Vicky felt exactly the same way. Though at the moment, I told myself when I get out of here, I'd never eat another meatball. It'd probably give me war flashbacks, or I guess store flashbacks. We filled up our Tupperware and shoved them back into our Kia Priviting backpacks. Then we needed to keep moving, keep searching, and keep marking the ground behind us as we fanned out into the great flat pack yonder, avoiding confrontations wherever we could. The three of us still had no idea what insanity was waiting for us out there. We had no idea that there were even more dangerous things than the staff lurking in the shadows. Day 68. Of course I kept count, writing it down on the back of my Jetlick coloring book. Trust me, when every night could mean a horrible death, you keep track of the nights. Not a single one of them escapes you. At a certain point, I think we all adapted in our own way. It was back to caveman times again, learning to be like our primal ancestors, hiding away from the dark and the monsters that hid there. So it was extremely surprising for us to get the most brutal attack during the day. At first, I thought we were being attacked by the staff during daylight hours, like a bolt from the blue. That's when we noticed they weren't attacking with their hands. They were all holding kitchen knives, holding us up like bandits. That's when we realized what had actually happened here. We weren't being attacked by the staff. We were being attacked by other humans dressed like the staff, wearing their hollowed-out heads like grisly masks. They told us that we were coming with them, and if we resisted, they'd cut us to ribbons. And seeing as none of us were movie action heroes, we thought it'd be best to do exactly what they said. This is how we fell into the clutches of Generalissimo VARDAGEN. Day 69. But things were not nice. I mean, I get it. Yeah, haha, funny, nice. I don't know if I'd mentioned this before, but the community I became part of in the Infinite Ikea after meeting Gloria was just one of many. Nobody knows exactly how many people are trapped in here. I'm hardly a martyr for spending 68 days in there. I know people who've been trapped in there for years, who've given all hope of escape and accepted their lot in life. They became the elders of a lot of these communities, helping others adjust. Though, of course, Generalissimo VARDAGEN was not one of these people. Myself, Vicky, and Kelvin were dragged by the strangers dressed as staff members into a fort made of smashed up wood nailed together into a huge, ominous structure. It was a far more extensive structure than any of the communities I'd visited or even heard about before in the Infinite Ikea. It was a true fortress, guarded by many more of those knife-wielding people, dressed in the clothes and in the flesh of the staff. It looked like some evil cult straight out of a damn horror movie. I'd never seen anything like it. We were dragged into a kind of tent in the middle of the camp, made out of stitched-together rugs. That's where we met Generalissimo VARDAGEN, surrounded by his guards. I'd later learn his namesake was a set of steak knives stocked in the IKEA kitchenware sections, similar to the knives being wielded by his gallery of goons. The Generalissimo himself was dressed like some absurd tin pot dictator, wearing a silly hat and a jacket covered in fake metals. His whole presence felt like a cosmic punishment for daring to believe things couldn't get any more absurd than they already were. His men forced us down onto our knees, and VARDAGEN cleared his throat to speak.
Quake in the fear at the sight of this IKEA'S ruler, the great and powerful Generalissimo VARDAGEN. I have united kingdoms from the gardening and bathroom supplies departments and crushed dissenting tribes in the office furniture sections to the west. If you wish to live, you will swear fealty to me and join my legion of servants. If you do as I say, you will be given safety and security from the staff come nightfall. If you do not bend the knee, I will have you destroyed!
By the time his little spiel was done, the man was red in the face and sweating profusely. It was clear that, much like your average IKEA shelving unit after a couple weeks of use, the great Generalissimo VARDAGEN had a few screws loose. None of us liked the idea of becoming slaves to some flat-packed Genghis Khan, so we tried to persuade him to just let us go, telling him that we hoped to escape the store, and with our help, he could escape too. That's when we learned a sobering lesson. For some people, life inside the Infinite Ikea was better than life outside. In the real world, the Generalissimo had been a twice-divorced ex-salaryman with nothing to his name but debts and regrets. But here, he was a demigod, a leader among the rest of us mere mortals. Why would he ever want to go back to the world that had given him nothing and taken everything? Day 70 to day 84. We were forced into weeks of hard labor after that, toiling under the Generalissimo and his gang of brigands. The soldiers worked us like dogs, making us carry food and furniture back to the Generalissimo's Scandinavian furniture fortress. One day bled into the next. The best I could say about any of this was at least we were safe behind the walls of the fortress at night, so we didn't need to worry about getting murdered by the staff in our sleep. However, tragedy struck again on day 85. Kelvin couldn't take the work anymore. One day, I think his mind just snapped. He refused to follow orders from the Generalissimo and his lieutenants, even when they threatened him with death. Sadly, that night they would prove that this wasn't just some empty threat. When night fell, they tied up Kelvin's arms and legs and left him outside the fortress. We were just forced to watch as the staff assembled and beat our friend to death while he lay there unable to defend himself. Even in all the time I'd spent in the Infinite Ikea, that was the most harrowing thing I'd ever seen. But in one of the few acts of righteous cosmic justice that we'd seen since being trapped in here all those months ago, just a few days after Kelvin's brutal execution, day 90, the day of the revolution. While I'd love to tell you that I started this, there are no heroes in this story. I just happened to be the one telling you about it. Some internal conflict between the Generalissimo and his men boiled over into a kind of civil war that tore the fortress apart from within. Vicky and I escaped, but in different directions. I'd like to imagine she got out in the end. It helps me sleep at night. But one thing I will tell you, Generalissimo VARDAGEN found out what happened to tyrants, big and small, when his closest confidants give him the Julius Caesar treatment with the knives from which he took his name. I don't think there's anything wrong in taking a little joy in that. For days afterwards, I just walked. I felt so empty, but I refused to just lay down and let myself die. Even though so much of the hope had been beaten out of me, I couldn't betray Brenda by just giving up in here. It wouldn't be right. It just wouldn't be right. The days ticked on and nothing changed. I had no food, no weapons, and I was getting so tired. Then night fell, and the staff started chasing me. They seemed even more aggressive than before. I couldn't fight. All I could do was run. I ran and I ran and I ran, not even looking where I was going, as the crowd of staff started catching up with me. Getting closer and closer, I ran until there was a doorway before me. I didn't even think. I just was trying to get away. That's when I noticed that the store's roof was no longer above me. For the first time in 100 days, I was once again tasting fresh air. That's right, folks. On day 100, I was out. I truly made it out. This victory, however, was short-lived. A group of about 6 staff members burst out of the front door behind me, charging towards me with ferocious speed. I couldn't move. All I could do was grit my teeth and wince, ready to accept my death at what had otherwise been the high point of my recent life. What a depressing irony that would be. But instead, gunshots rang out through the air. A hail of bullets cleaved through the staff members, dropping them to the ground mere feet away from me, stone dead. That's when I turned to see a group of men with assault rifles and tactical gear walking towards me. In any other situation, this might have been terrifying, but right then, it was the happiest moment of my life. These men took me away from the parking lot of what is now an abandoned IKEA. They told me they were from a group called the SCP Foundation, and that I'd been declared missing for some time now. I didn't care about any of that. I just asked them if Brenda had gotten out. If she hadn't escaped too, then this was all for nothing. You can't even imagine my relief when they told me that Brenda was never even trapped. She was the one who reported my disappearance after I dropped off the face of the earth in what she thought was a perfectly normal IKEA shopping session, before that building was shut down and cordoned off under some less insane pretense. But Brenda was alive and safe, and I'd get to be with her again. I've no shame in telling you I cried, but I'd like to specify that they were absolutely tears of joy. The men from the SCP Foundation told me that they'd give me a medicine that'd help me forget all this after I told them my story, and there's no part of me that has a problem with that. Some things are better left forgotten. But before the SCP Foundation wipes it all away from my mind and I get to go live with my beloved wife once more, this was how I survived 100 dreadful days in the Infinite Ikea. Now go check out How to Actually Beat SCP-3008 The Infinite Ikea and Surviving Inside SCP-3008 The Infinite Ikea for more of this Swedish flat pack hellscape.